We've Galera Cordia August Foil to Road. Welcome to be my guest with me, Mary Honan, on Lear Media TV, supporting the Samaritans, Limerick and Tipperary Clare's Wish Foundation in Limerick and Deal Animal Rescue in West Limerick. And I'm truly honoured today again to have a wonderful guest on my show, and it's the Honorary Consul of West Virginia and Pennsylvania, Mr. James Lamb. And I stumbled over that because I was nearly going to say Pittsburgh. But so how are you? Welcome to be my guest.
I'm very well, Mary. Thanks for having me. And you would not be wrong by saying Pittsburgh. They give us an official territory, and in my case, it's Western Pennsylvania and West Virginia. But the main city in that whole area would be Pittsburgh, and that's where I am based.
That's where you are based.
Right on. Right.
Tell me, what is the role of an honorary consul, and how often would you come to Ireland, James?
Right.
We were talking off camera about you've been to Ireland several times, you know, so I'm just interested in the role.
Yeah, that's correct. So the role is about representing Ireland, its people, to some extent its government, in places where the Irish Department of Foreign Affairs doesn't have a professional structure.
Yeah.
So, for instance, within the United States, obviously there's an embassy of Ireland in Washington, and there are consuls general across the United States, New York, Boston, etc. But then there are places like Pittsburgh and other cities of interest, cities that have a diaspora of Irish, and they would like the Irish government and would look to identify somebody in that region, in that area, to act on their behalf, to represent the needs of Irish citizens, to facilitate connections between Ireland and this region, to help in any way we can to foster and build not just the link but the footprint of Ireland in these various areas. So I'm one of 8 or 10, I suppose, honorary consuls across the United States.
But your background would be in business, am I correct?
Actually, it's not really. I do have some business background.
Yeah.
I run a local nonprofit here in Pittsburgh called the Ireland Institute of Pittsburgh.
That's right. Yeah.
And we are primarily a visa sponsor and training facilitator for Irish young people. So we help young people from Ireland, from the universities, from the colleges, and sometimes from the secondary education level, who come out to Pittsburgh and to other parts of the states and obtain training in companies. So in that context, my connection with business is facilitating placements for young people, but the background is really in assisting young people educationally.
So you would be you'd be in association, I suppose, with the J1 visas, and that there'd be a connection.
Correct.
There between.
Correct. We are one of a number of J1 visa sponsors.
Yeah.
In the United States that are able to sponsor young people out to come and work and train and go to school and other things.
How important do you think that the J1 visa is, especially, I suppose, to youngsters trying to gain, I suppose, international experience in business or in whatever area that they're training in, to get that opportunity to travel abroad? How valuable do you think it is?
You can't even put a value on it. It is that important. It is that much of a priority, especially for young people from Ireland who may not get the opportunities. I mean, Ireland is obviously a robust and open economy, and they've done really well in a lot of ways. But you have such a great number of young people, graduates coming out, and there are only so many spots in Ireland to get some experience. And it does take these opportunities abroad. And obviously, you know, the connection between Ireland and the United States is that strong that the J1 visa program here in the States just really copper fastens that opportunity and gives people a chance to come out and get that experience, develop that resume, and go back and contribute to the continuing growth of Ireland.
For those, say, James, who are out there, the Irish who have transitioned from Ireland and moved abroad, I suppose you do think, like I do, the importance of having people in another country who can actually help you to settle in to the country and having that connection with the Irish abroad. Do you often find that the Irish abroad, or say the Irish Americans, are almost more Irish than those that are indigenous to this country, because they know the importance of holding on to their culture? However tenuous that culture is to Ireland, they know how important it is to hold on to it, because once you lose it, it's, you know, you've lost your identity.
Yeah, and I think a great expression of that, or how that manifests here in Pittsburgh and other places, I'm sure, is in organizations like the GAA.
Yeah.
Where you have men and women in their 20s and maybe 30s that come into Pittsburgh or other places, and maybe they stop playing football or hurling or whatever the case may be back when they were 15, and just, you know, went on with their lives and got. And when they come to communities like ours, and they see such a thriving culture of not just the GAA, but, you know, traditional music and other things, they say, yeah, this is what I grew up with, and they do find a comfort. Having said that, they do that, but they also get the taste of all those other cultures that make up America, and that are the things that really make America great.
Exactly.
are its diversity. It's the cultural opportunities here. So it's a great mix of that sense of Irishness that's here, but also the opportunities to see everything else.
Pot of cultures, and that can, I suppose, give people a sense that, you know, we may be different, but what we all share is this love of say music or sport or learning from each other. Is you know, I worked for many years in Bunratty Castle as an entertainer. It was a tourist spot, so most of our tourists came from, or most of our audiences came from America, or came from France or Germany and places like that. And I suppose for 14 years, I became so conscious of the importance of Ireland being promoted internationally. We're a tiny island, but we're rich, I suppose, as a country of literature and of poetry and of music. So somebody described us one time as a small country that thinks big. And we think of ourselves much bigger than we actually are. And then that helps us to project ourselves, I suppose, internationally and on an international platform as a greater country than we probably are size-wise. And I think it's important that we project ourselves to the diaspora, and that we keep that link between Ireland and the diaspora. And I think that's what our station is all about, is trying to promote. We're aimed primarily at the diaspora, the Irish diaspora, the Irish people and the diaspora, because we feel that the Irish abroad need some connection with Ireland. And, you know, if they can get it through shows like ours or that, do you feel it's important for the Irish abroad to have that connection with Ireland, as, you know, not just to embrace their new culture and their new homes, but also to have that something that they can listen to every day, that they hear the Irish voice, or they hear the Irish sense of humor that they mightn't always hear when they're at work during the day?
I think it's all part and parcel of that same sort of connection that organizations here try to provide.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes the homesickness not so bad. And as somebody who worked for a long time, just to give you a little bit of background, Mary, our organization, the Ireland Institute, came up out of the as a response to the troubles in Northern Ireland when it was decided through the International Fund for Ireland that there needed to be some opportunities for young people to just get away.
Yeah.
And as bad as things could have been during some of those times in Belfast and in Derry and along the border, and finding that respite in places like Pittsburgh, even for just a few weeks or months,
exactly,
that homesickness kicks in. And just having, it's funny, we talk about homesickness, and you know, the first week it's great, the second week you're filing in, and by the third week, you know, all you're looking for is a good cup of tea because you can't get one, you know,
and a packet of potatoes.
Exactly, all that kind of those things that just bring you back and say, oh, okay, it's only 4 or 5 more weeks, I can hang, I can do it.
A cup of berry tea.
But those, yeah, berries, of course, yeah, nothing but. And the people who have made their lives here, my wife for one, and so many others who, you know, they just like to retreat to that every once in a while, just to, oh yeah, that's my home, and that's
Where's your
what
wife from?
My wife is from near Crossmaglen in South Armagh.
Armagh.
A little village called Craigan. It's a crossroads.
Very famous, very
between crossing.
Yeah, very famous part of Northern Ireland. Hardly ever out of the news at one stage.
Yeah, right.
Very
exactly.
nationalist.
Right.
Fantastic. Right. But is there obviously is so quite a lot there for people who have decided I'm going to move. There's do you know, I was actually thinking there, when I was born in the UK, I was born in London to an English father, but my mother was staunchly Irish, and she came from a tiny little area where I live right now. I haven't moved. And she was so homesick in England. If there had been something like your organization in London at the time, she might have settled in to be able to hear an Irish voice, to be able to drink a cup of Barry's tea or whatever, and to feel a sense of home. But there wasn't that sense at the time. She was the only Irish person in the whole area. My father's side of the family were all Welsh and English. So she was really homesick. And I suppose that's what's made me really conscious of the importance of helping people to settle into a different lifestyle while bringing along their familiarity with them, if you like, to help them to ease into that new lifestyle. Because many people, when they move to America, they would never come home. They would never come back to Ireland. They want to come back on a holiday.
Yeah.
But if they can just have every day a sense of Ireland that helps them to get through the 9 hours or 10 hours of a different culture, you know, 1 hour of Ireland might be enough for some people.
Absolutely. You know? Absolutely. I recall there was a push maybe 10, 15 years ago to create something called Celtic Vision, which was going to be a sort of a TV package that people could tune. I don't know that ever took off the way they had hoped to, but it sounds to me like that you have in mind bringing some kind of taste of Ireland to people through this great new technology that we have.
Yeah.
You know, and technology has made it so much easier for people to enjoy. You know, I remember back in the 80s and 90s going to try to watch a football match at Croke Park, And we're holding the antenna up, trying to get the signal from Satanta Sports or whatever. And now you can just
the triangular aerials on the TV.
Yeah.
If you stood in the wrong direction, the aerial would buzz.
Right. And you had to get the signal right onto the satellite and all this other stuff. And now it's all just, just pay your subscription and watch all the football you want. And the technology has been great in that way to do things like what you want to do. And that's great.
Well, I've been very involved, I suppose, all my life in the Irish dancing scene. I judge and I teach it. And I've been to America many times judging. And I've interviewed quite a lot of my colleagues who are now living in Canada or Australia or New Zealand or America, all over America. And some of them have moved from Ireland over there. One in particular struck me, and that was Jackie O'Leary Fanning. When she moved to Canada, she was so homesick. She said, I'm never going to stick it out, on the first interview I had with her. And she said, I'm really missing my mother back in Ireland. And now Jackie just has completely settled in and would never really come back permanently. I couldn't imagine her coming back permanently now, because she has embraced Canada in a huge way, but she still loves home, and her mother is here and she comes here all the time. But it's just knowing that you can have something like our show where you can have a voice and come on and talk about what you miss and what you love about and what are the differences in the culture, or what are the similarities, and what you found easy to settle into. And I suppose being a voice across the divide is what I suppose we're hoping that the shows will be. But what do you do outside of your position as honorary consul?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the honorary consul, and it is really a great honor to have to be appointed to this. But as I mentioned, I run this J1 visa program that the Institute not only does the visas, but it also does promote connections between Pittsburgh and Ireland. We have recently launched the Pittsburgh Irish Business Network, and our hope is number one, to attract Pittsburgh area companies that may be interested in opportunities in Ireland, because the opportunities abound. There are so many great stories of investments into Ireland, as well as Irish companies scaling up into the United States. And at the minute, the state of Pennsylvania has nearly as many people working in Irish companies here as they have Irish people working in Pennsylvania companies here. And it's a big number. It's like it's in the hundreds of thousands of people that are working, and it's or I should say the tens of thousands anyway. And it's a great testament to the boldness and bravery of companies that just said, we're going to do this, and they created something big, and it's meant the livelihoods of tens of thousands of people on both sides of the Atlantic.
Isn't it? It's amazing how people have that, and it is a brave decision to start any business, let alone to actually uproot, leave Ireland, set up a business in the United States. And then in many respects, it's probably easier to set up a business in the United States because, one, it's not so small as it is here. You're not so crowded, if you like. The market isn't as crowded in the United States as there's that room. But you can also probably be yourself a little bit more when you move to another country, as a country as big. You can reinvent yourself better as a business, but it still takes an awful lot of courage for a small company here in Ireland to up sticks, move to the United States and set up. But it always seems to work out.
Yeah, well, I must give credit to the government agencies like Enterprise Ireland that help make that happen. they've gotten quite professional
Yeah.
at identifying who's ready for it, who's not, and they don't mess around with ideas that they don't think are going to work. So they've been pretty particular and deliberate in how they assist companies that do want to scale up into the international scene.
Yeah, and tell me, for people who are and don't know what the J1 visa is about, how does one apply in this country as a student for a J1 visa? What's the process? And
so the first thing I want to say is that the J1 visa is certainly for university students, but not just university students. It's also for that tech student who is attending one of the many great IoTs across Ireland. We do a lot of work with young people from Cavan and Monaghan, from Dundalk, from along that border area, but any Institute of Technology across that network. Now, at the university level, students can just go into their Office of International Students and find a number of organizations like us that are sponsors. They can get information on how to apply. Most of the IoTs don't have an international students office because it's not something that is at top of mind. But we have found our own niche in the IoTs. We still do university students as well. But our organization has partnered with a group in Ireland based in Roscommon called J1 Ireland.
Yeah.
And J1 Ireland is based in Roscommon. And so when a student is looking to come out on a J1, whether it's a summer work travel or a 12-month internship or whatever the case may be, we refer them to the J1 Ireland group in Roscommon, and they process the application. We get them the paperwork, and we're off to the races.
There's an organization here that I'm I suppose involved in, and they'd be worth, I suppose, you having a chat to as well. And they're the British and Irish Trading Alliance. So it's set up by Paul Whitnell, who is a Corkman, and he's been living in London, and it's to try and bring, I suppose, business, but they've now branched into the United States and into, as far as I know, they're going to be branching into Australia, but they're trying to get youngsters involved in the trades industry in the UK or in America, or because it's important. There's a lot of youngsters who will not go to college and will not be interested in college and are interested in a trade, but they can't get a trade here in Ireland, or they can't get a job here in Ireland. But because of these, I suppose, international exchanges, they're important because they don't just give people jobs, they give people hope.
Right.
And hope is everything. If you feel, well, I can't get a job here, but I can go on a J1 visa. I can get a J1 visa after I've been in college, and I can go to America. That hope keeps people going. There's nothing, I don't think there's anything worse than the loss of hope, or the feeling that, oh, there's no jobs out there for me.
Yeah, well, if I could just harken back to where we got started, when we started bringing young people out to Pittsburgh, the rules were just to get the particular visa that, or to be on the program, you had to be unemployed. So you already had a strike against you being eligible for this program, and you were coming from some of the hardest places. If you can imagine, Falls Road, Shankle Road, East Belfast, Bogside, Waterside, Derry, anywhere along the border, where there was difficulty. They didn't even know what hope was. I mean, hope was something that they found oftentimes when they got into a program and started thinking about, there are some opportunities out there, and I don't have to fall into this other way. I can find a better way. And I always thought that the great thing that we did was quite a passive thing. We created an environment. All we did was really create an environment where people were welcome and people were allowed to be themselves and find common ground with each other. You'd be amazed at how many of the students on both sides of the cultural divide in Northern Ireland ended up realizing they liked the same bands. They supported the same teams in Premier League soccer, Premier League football. They ate the same food, you know, and Ulster Fry didn't matter what religion or what community you came from. An Ulster Fry was an Ulster Fry, and if you did it right, it was a good thing on a Sunday morning. We got a few folks out here to figure out how to make a good one, and that helped a lot. Those kind of things. And so hope was the thing that that we felt like we were giving them, and those kids now that are looking to possibly get into the trades. You can imagine still up in around East Belfast with all this talk about the Northern Ireland Protocol and the whole Brexit fiasco that it is, and young people trying to understand their place, and if they come from certain parts of East Belfast and other areas that they're not quite sure what way they're supposed to go.
What way has Brexit affected, or has Brexit affected your I suppose connection with the north of Ireland and with continuing on with this? Has
it's certainly expanded our reach, because we were even told by some of the colleges up along the border there in Cavan and Monaghan and even into the north. We became popular again. In 2013, we started seeing that the peace dividend had taken hold. We did our last International Fund for Ireland Wider Horizons program that year. And we frankly didn't know what our next opportunity with Ireland was going to be. We were all about the peace and reconciliation. That was kind of, they weren't doing that on an overseas basis anymore, sending young people out. And so when Brexit came, all of a sudden, the opportunities for training in Great Britain became less, especially for the people from the Republic of Ireland.
Republic,
but it also started to have an impact on, what was happening in the north, and so we are actually seeing some expansion of our visa for the entire island, north and south.
So it's
because of Brexit.
It's been a positive, I suppose, experience. So for you, Brexit has been positive in the sense that it has highlighted what you do and the J1 visas and the importance of your work that it mightn't have had Brexit not come along. So that's I suppose a positive aspect of Brexit.
Yeah, I suppose so. I still think it was a big mistake.
Do you?
But I think I think they it seems to me that the people that created the Brexit idea didn't really either they didn't think it through, or they figured that they could get it passed among an angry working class in Great Britain, and that's what happened. But you can see the fallout of it now. There's an awful lot of uncertainty. The whole protocol, the fisheries, everything.
I think it'll certainly take a few years for all the creases to be ironed out.
That's true.
But it still got, I suppose, one of its largest votes, and I think I think it would be wrong to say that people voted for it for immigration purposes or its border purposes. I think there was so many areas, I suppose, that people voted for it on. The fact that I suppose they were looking for jobs, and the jobs were in decline. They wanted independence. They wanted to be able to control, I suppose, their own borders. I suppose that's probably what everyone wants to do at the end of the day, is to have safe borders. We can see it with Australia, what's happening with the Djokovic situation. They're completely closed down their borders. But I mean, Europe is different. We're kind of like open borders, and that it's a different situation than the US or than Australia even. So I don't know why people chose to vote for it. I suppose people had many different reasons for voting, but the fact is they voted for it, and it's been positive for you, which is a positive, I suppose, James.
Well, yeah, I suppose in terms of what we do and why we do it, we've gotten a little bit more attention about what we do. But
well, how difficult was it when, now, I mean, I attended, I mean, many times I'm very friendly with the people who organized the global peace event that was on in the north of Ireland. So a few years ago, we went up to it. We attended it for a weekend, and it was amazing. And Cooperation Ireland, Dr. Alan Largy and Barry Fennell, they set up Cooperation Ireland, that brought the Queen to Northern Ireland at the time. Among other things, they've created, I suppose, an organization that gets Protestant children and Catholic children and adults together to actually find out what you were just talking about, the similarities that they have rather than the differences. I mean, I come from an English father, Irish mother, Protestant father's family, staunchly Irish Catholic mother. So I grew up never seeing any difference between my father's side of the family and my mother's side. He changed with her. He became a Catholic, and a very strict Catholic with her. It's amazing. But she, I just saw there be no difference between them. And that's what you're trying to create with the work you're doing, is this. Yep. We have much more in common than we have different.
Absolutely.
It must have been difficult though in the beginning for you.
Because we didn't know what we were doing in the beginning. we thought we were going to just sit them down and tell them how it is.
This is it.
So this sort of proactive approach to peace and reconciliation, for us, turned out to be not the right way to do it. And I mean, thankfully, we learned from that mistake early on, and we started just, as I said, a more passive approach to it was just creating an environment here in Pittsburgh, especially in letting people be who they are, telling the young people from sort of the unionist side of the cultural divide, when you're asked out there, some of them were feeling a bit offended about being called Irish because they came from as far as people in Pittsburgh knew,
they were British.
And we really tried to tell them to assert themselves. Oh, no, I'm British. Glad to be here. Happy to be part of all this, but I'm not Irish. I'm British.
Yeah.
And just make that, that whole idea of teaching assertiveness became really a sort of a linchpin part of our curriculum, because behind all this wasn't just a jolly for a couple weeks or months where kids were coming out and having fun. They were working. We had them attending one of the universities here on a bespoke program that we created. And it was all about teaching communication so that not just so that the two cultures could understand each other, but two kids could.
Two kids, yeah.
Two young people could talk to each other about, and not just like what happened in their home country, but
and not be apologetic for who they believe they are, for their cultural identity.
Right. But even the simple things of like, I don't like how you're keeping your part of the apartment. You know,
But
the
you,
whole idea of he's a slob and he's a neat freak, and how do we figure that out? Those very simple, not easy, but simple,
non-violent
low
confrontation.
end, those low end communication skills that you have to have if you want to start talking about the 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 big worldly issues of peace and reconciliation, and your father did this and my uncle did that, blah blah blah. And we kind of had to just get them able to just have a conversation and be assertive enough without being aggressive. And
That's
that's kind of
very
what we're looking.
important, James, because I think one thing that, and I suppose it's a generalization because there are exceptions to the rules, but I think generally here in Ireland and in the UK as well, I notice that youngsters aren't very good at asserting themselves. They're not very good now, with the exceptions. There's always the exceptions who are great at debating and who are involved in debating societies, which I think are wonderful in that. But in general, one always gets this impression of Americans and American children as being incredibly assertive, well able to speak and unapologetic, as I said, for their beliefs and their viewpoints. I do think that our society is in danger of becoming less so because we're trying to sanitize everything instead of allowing people to have their view. And as Voltaire says, I disagree profoundly with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it.
Right.
That seems to be with all this, what's the word I'm looking for, cancelling people because of their views or what this, you don't have to agree with somebody, but in order to be able to come to some sort of consensus, you have to listen. You, at the end of it, you may still profoundly disagree, but you've listened to them. And I think what you say is that you're teaching these children assertiveness, to be able to say, look, I respect you, but I don't like the mess you're creating inside in this house, but I'm still willing to live with you, but you need to actually tidy your area because it's really getting on my nerves. Simple little things like that can carry into the rest of your life and how you
Exactly.
approach another human being.
Exactly. And so many of those young people in the early days just did not have those skills. And I think that our biggest success was just teaching that, you know, regardless of all the job skills that they got and the opportunities they had to learn and see parts of America, I think our greatest achievement was teaching young people how to listen and how to talk so that they would be listened to, how to listen so that they could understand and then talk and be assertive. And I think that was what was our greatest achievement. And all the 3,000 young people have come through our program since 1989. The 1,400 of them who were those kids from the hardest parts of Belfast and Derry and the border, and even in hard parts of Dublin, where they would come as on a cross-border program. Those were the skills that meant the most, I thought.
Is it predominantly based towards the north of Ireland? Would it be safe to say to the on the borders and?
It may well be now, only because the history was there.
Yeah.
But anymore, for instance, we still do get a group of University of Ulster students who come to work in the hospitality. They're out of the hospitality program at UU, and they are working, for instance, either for Aer Lingus or for one of the big travel and tour companies outside of New York. So we do visas for the University of Ulster's hospitality program. We do them for specific areas, but the individuals who come out sort of on their own are typically from Dublin and other schools in the Republic.
God, James, I actually think it's an incredibly important organization that you have. I mean, the more I'm thinking about it, I mean, how dangerous do you think that the contemporary society is at the moment with this cancel culture and the dangers of cancel culture, where you have people like John Cleese being cancelled because he did a sketch in the 1980s about don't mention the war or whatever. And I mean, if you can't separate satire from or comedy from reality, and comedians will argue that that's what they're supposed to do, is challenge and say things that will shock almost people. And as someone who did their PhD on childhood under Nazism, you know, I just worry about the way society is almost trying to shut people down that they don't like, instead of sitting and listening to them, as I say, and still not liking what they say at the end of it, but being able to, as you said, debate them.
Mhm.
And you listen to people like Jordan Peterson, who can sit down and have a debate with somebody. You can profoundly disagree with him, or he can profoundly disagree with you, but through debate you can kind of decide which side of the aisle you're on after the debate, who won that debate, who discussed it better, who made a better valid points. And I think what you're doing there in teaching children to debate and to argue and to stand their ground and to be unapologetic for their viewpoints is important.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're built for. You know, that's why we exist as an organization, to give young people that platform, really, to understand each other. You know, mutual understanding is really sort of a pillar of why our organization exists in the first place, because it's such an important thing.
Very sad world if we all thought the same and acted the same. We'd be Ottomans. We'd be just machines, just going along, press a button. And, you know, we have to have our individuality. That isn't to say that some things that people will say aren't completely dangerous or incendiary. But you need to be able to listen to those dangerous and incendiary comments as well, in order for people to say, well, that didn't sound very rational. What he's saying now sounds completely rational. Do you know, I mean, I just worry about this cancel culture and everything being, and fear of, and statues and everything being, history almost trying to be wiped out. You know, we have, you don't have to like history. In fact, if history offends you, all the good, but hopefully you won't repeat it if you're offended by it.
Right.
No, and I mean,
that's always the fear. Yeah, if you don't study history, you're doomed to repeat it. Yeah,
doomed to repeat it. And we have the history of Ireland, and that's what's making you do what you do, is to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Exactly.
Do you know?
Exactly.
So what's next for you now?
So we're going into 2022, very excited about an opportunity. This is the Institute now, the Ireland Institute, my organization. Very excited about an opportunity to develop some programming with the Dundalk Institute of Technology around advanced manufacturing. Excellent. So advanced manufacturing being the industrial sector by which we create opportunities for placements here in the States, here in Pittsburgh, for young people from Ireland, from the Institute, and to create opportunities for trade and business exchange between Pittsburgh and Irish companies in that sector, faculty exchange, all kinds of really interesting opportunities both ways. But underneath it all, and there's a connection to the north as well. It's a cross-border. I believe it's part of the shared island space, shared island unit that the Taoiseach has created within his office. And there's opportunities there's a school in East Belfast called Portview Trade Center that will partner with Dundalk, and they will bring young people out to us and we will be charged with helping them take up paid training opportunities in the companies here in Pittsburgh, and more importantly, we expect and intend to underpin that experience with opportunities of learning communication, assertiveness training, how to be a champion, all those kinds of important things that we're so that's the right in front of us opportunity. In terms of the Honorary Consul, I will continue to support various kinds of programs here. The whole Irish American Pittsburgh Irish community has lots of opportunities for partnership and fellowship, and we're looking forward to a big year as we come out of COVID, getting some in-person events and opportunities to mix and enjoy each other's company.
Well, James Lamb, thank you so very much for being my guest. It was a true honor to have you on the show today, and long may you continue to do such great work, because I think if nothing else but the assertiveness courses for youngsters and the ability to talk and the importance of dialogue, if that was the only thing that you helped youngsters with, you're doing a great job, and long may it continue.
Thank you so much, Mary. I appreciate the time. Happy to come on the show anytime you want.
I'd be delighted to have you on again. Shindera Lesh on Clár. That's the end of the show for today. Until the same time, or until the next time, Lacuna of Day. Bowalam Tugalir Chiacana, Sonus Agus Gra. I wish you peace, happiness, and love. Agus Gaday Shiv Slán. Slán, bye.
Goramagat, Slán.
No Abere.